Alright, we've got our timeline now with our clips in there, and you can see that they're all getting shorter, meaning that they're only staying on the screen for a very short period of time. So the pacing is increasing as the clips get shorter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mirror this or butterfly it around the end point. So we're essentially going to select these clips and we're going to run them in reverse. We'll start slow, then we'll go fast, and then we'll start slowing down again, and at the end we're going to put in a title card. So I'm going to begin by selecting everything there. You could do Command A, that's another way of doing it, and then I move the playhead there and zoom in towards the end. And I'm going to use Shift just to deselect that last clip because I don't want that there. And now I'm going to use Command C or Control C in Windows to copy those clips, move the playhead to the end, and then paste it in using Command V or Control V on Windows. And there's no way of reversing these clips automatically. It's pasted them all in. After Effects, which is a companion program to this for doing titling and special effects, actually allows you to reverse sequences. However, as far as I can tell, you can't do it in Premiere. Notice these clips that are active. I'm just going to move them up into another slot. And then I'm manually going to have to reverse the order of them. So just move them up there. Go all the way back to the end. Zoom in a little bit. And I want to grab that last clip and then just move it over and butt it up to that adjacent clip there. And I'll just repeat that process until essentially I have everything going in reverse order. So we started from slow to fast, and now we're going from fast to slow. The longer clips being on screen the longest and therefore appearing slower. Okay, those are my clips all assembled, and you'll notice if I just zoom out, you can see there's kind of a logarithmic progression there. At the left they're quite wide, and then they start narrowing to the center where they get faster, and then as they slow down they get wider again. Think of it sort of like a mirror image of itself, or butterfly wings. And you can scrub through that and check it out. And I'm just hitting play, and you can see the pacing, make sure everything's okay. We've got roughly 40 seconds of video there. And you can see on the timeline. So this is going to double it by doing this butterfly or a mirror image effect. And that's fine. But if your video is getting over 60 seconds, so you're in the 1 minute range, it's getting a little long in the tooth. And maybe you need to do a little bit of editing. Now that one in the middle appears on the screen for such a little time we don't even see it. It's below our perception threshold. And so I'm just going to remove that. So just move the playhead there. And I'm going to select it. And then I'm going to hold down the Option key or Alt key on a PC. And I'm going to hit Delete. So I need to select it. And then hold Option or Alt and then Delete. And that does what is called a ripple delete. It just moves everything to the right, over to the left to butt up to the adjacent clip and filling the gap that was left by the thing we deleted. Okay, now I'm going to add a card at the end. And so I click on New Item and choose Color Matte. And I just click OK. And now I'm going to choose a color. I'm going to use a gold for this. And I'm just going to name it Gold Title Card. And it appears in your bin just along with all the other assets. I'm just going to drag it in there, and it's just a simple yellow graphic. We're going to bring some text in, and I'm not going to bring it in right at the beginning of the card. I'm going to let the card come up for a while. So I move the playhead in from the end of that clip, and at that position I'm going to use the text tool and just click down somewhere near the center of the card. And you'll notice that it activates the text menu under Effect Controls. And if you can't see that and click on it to activate it, then you need to go to the Window menu where you can find it there. We've got a lot of controls under here for text. I'm just going to open it up by clicking on the triangle. We can choose a font, and I'm going to just use that one called Phosphate. We can also set it up so it's a different color. We can center it. I'm going to make this red, like a sort of burgundy red, so I click on that swatch, choose my color. You can control the size of the type using that slider there. So I'm just going to click in there and I'm going to type my title, hit return, and I'll put by Jim Kinney. And I'm going to select that with my text tool and just give it a different font. I'm just going to use Minion Bold or something like that. And I'm going to make it a bit smaller. So I'll use that slider, just dial down the size, and then I'm going to use leading, which is right here, and just to give us a little bit more space between those lines. We can also determine when this text comes in using a little trick with transparency or opacity. You'll notice that it comes in at 100% opacity immediately. I just move the playhead to the beginning of where the text is, and then I go down to opacity. Just open that up, and you'll notice a little stopwatch there, because we can time when we change the opacity. With the playhead right at the beginning, I'm going to find the opacity. I'm going to hit that stopwatch, and it's going to create a little diamond marker on a timeline. You can see where the cursor is. I'm on a timeline. You can only see half of that diamond, but that's called a keyframe. And what it's done is it's set a transparency for that text at that time. I'm now going to move my playhead in a little bit more, and I'm going to click this diamond, and that's created a second keyframe at that point in time. Now I'm going to click the little left arrow to take me back to the first keyframe. And at that first keyframe, I'm going to set the opacity all the way down to 0. And so you can see that as I scrub over it. Final image into the yellow card, then the text comes in, but it's in at 0%, and then it starts to grow over time. It increases its level of opacity until it's solid. And we can change other factors over time, such as the scale, rotation, position, and so on. This can give you what is called motion graphics. And there's the timeline. You can see it there as it's increasing over time. And you can move that timeline or move the points in the timeline to vary the degree of change in opacity. We're just about ready to do our final render. To render, we choose Render File, Render Media. And you'll notice that it's only rendering out the yellow card. And there's a reason for that. And that's because within our sequence, we only had the yellow card selected. We need to select all of our media in order to have that successfully exported. So we're just going to do that again. Go back to the Edit function. And this time, I'm going to use Command A or Control A in Windows to select all our media. And now, when we go to the File, and we ask it to render our media, you'll notice in this preview window, everything is now included. Now look at how it drops to black at the end. So it looks like the card ends, but the text continues. I want them to end at the same time, so we hold on this image with the yellow background and the red text. So let's go back into our timeline and take a look at why this is happening and make an adjustment. So you'll notice right at the end that the text is longer than the card. We're just going to make them the same length. We're going to select it all. So Command A or Control A, File, Render Media. We can preview it just to make sure everything's okay. Yes, and at the end, both stay right to the end. So we can now hit the export. It's a button in the bottom right, and it starts to export that media for us. We can take a look at it. I go into my folder, so I'm going to look at my project folder, and there's my project, and there's a temporary file folder, but I can't see my video. Now there's a reason for that as well, and we need to go back in to Premiere Pro and set up our export preferences. So we're going to have to try this again. This time, when we go to export our media, it brings up the preview window, and this is an area that we need to pay attention to in the second column here. I don't want to give it a generic thing, so I'm just going to call that full spectrum. Now here in the blue, right below the title, you can see there's a path. And I've saved it in the wrong folder, so I'm going to click on that. And it brings up the Finder window. And now I can locate the folder into which I want my rendered video to be saved. And I'll choose that. And again, we'll export it. And we should find this time that our video is where we expect it to be. Open it up, go into full spectrum, and there's the video. We can open that up and preview it just to make sure there aren't any glitches, because things can happen in the render stage and errors can be made in the rendering process. So you should always do a final preview just to make sure everything in your video is A-OK. And that one appears to be working just fine. And so now you would post that up to either your YouTube channel or your Vimeo account, whichever platform you're using. Then copy its share URL and post that URL to the assignment area in the Learning Management System. And that's it. In our next segment, we're going to be working with music and environmental sounds. And we're going to use the beats in the music to determine where the images are appearing and for how long. So stay tuned for that.